Samsung enables you to do more on your terms. What's smart? It's all here. Samsung Digital. Everyone's invited.
If you're right that at least some stocks are worth buying now, which ones would you buy?
He's one of America's leading economic and financial commentators.
How about the question of trust in the system?
He brings together the world's business leaders and prominent market experts.
We're in a bottoming process. When will this punishment ever end?
He is a pioneer and a legend in business circles.
The day will come when you'll have your reward in a better market.
He is Louis Rukeyser.
Welcome back.
Saturday on CNBC Asia.
He fires the question.
How much longer can this rally last? When will they come? We're seeing some good news coming out.
To bring you the very latest.
Here's what's going on Nasdaq at the moment. It's really just a question of timing.
It's a technical squeeze coming about.
He's European Market Wrap's Nigel Roberts, along with his stock watchers. They'll sum up the sessions.
Helsinki most active.
Up quite strongly.
Plus update you on the U.S.
To be very impressed, we saw some pressure in those short maturities.
European Market Wrap, Tuesday to Saturday on CNBC Asia.
Tonight on E, Nokia trims third quarter sales but remains upbeat about the full year on good demand for its camera handsets. An analysis with Christophe Alonso of Barclays Private Clients. Camera phones also hot in Japan as demand lifts shipments higher for the first time in over a year. We'll find out why these imaging phones are hitting a high note with Balaji Buvarahan of Frost & Sullivan. And what will happen to contract manufacturers in Asia as more and more companies outsource production to China? We'll ask George Feng of Selectron. Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Keith Liu. Thanks for watching E on CNBC. Well, Nokia is trimming its sales target for the third quarter, saying the sales for July to September will come in between 7.1 and 7.4 billion euros. That compares with earlier estimates of between 7.2 and 7.6 billion euros. However, it is maintaining its full year estimates, suggesting good take-up of Nokia's products. And that includes the 7650 camera phone. I have one of the phones with me here. Nokia's Director for Imaging Business, Mauro Montanaro, says the new phone is helping to spur growth of multimedia messaging, particularly in Asia.
It's doing quite well. Yeah, we are very happy with the response. We have in Asia right now about 15 operators on MMS and counting. So we expect almost every operator to be on MMS in the fall. Actually, we hope that by October, November, we have covered the whole Asia with MMS.
Well, Morgan Stanley is also upbeat about MMS. The brokerage upgraded Nokia to overweight from equal weight, saying it sees good potential for the handset makers, color screens, as well as camera phones. The Achilles heel, though, is Nokia's networks business, especially in the GSM arena. Weak spending by telcos is seen denting Nokia's network sales by up to 5% and could cap the group's full-year results. Shares of Nokia currently trading down 0.8% in finished trade. Well, for more on Nokia's mid-quarter guidance, let's talk with Christophe Alonso, telco equipment analyst with Barclays Private Clients. Christophe joins us from his offices in London. Christophe, good to have you on the show. Well, what do you make of what Nokia has come out with its mid-quarter update? Are your thoughts pretty much in line or consistent with what they have with what they've announced so far?
Well, I think the statement is rather positive, actually. On the handsets front, it's a bit better than what analysts were expecting, and it's more optimistic about the year-end. On the other hand, the network infrastructure business is much weaker than we had expected, and all that is non-3G, while margins have collapsed much more than all analysts, including ourselves, were expecting. So on this front, this is not positive, and we are much more worried about Ericsson or Siemens in Europe than Nokia.
Right, so for Nokia then, adding the positives and the negatives, what is the net effect?
Well, I think it's positive overall. because if you look at the handsets division, it's roughly slightly below 80% of their sales. They were expecting, they were quite cautious about margins, talking about 18.5 or 19% on operating margins for the phones. They will deliver something above 20%, which is really outstanding yet again. And this is despite a massive marketing effort that they've been incurring in the last 1 or 2 quarters in order to boost these sales before year end.
Right, speaking of year end, what does Nokia have to do to really bring up those numbers, at least in the 4th quarter?
Well, given the guidance they've given previously and given what has been said today, it's going to be quite difficult for them to beat their previous guidance for the full year. If they are only able to maintain a 5% operating margins on network, then it will mean that they'll have to grow both volumes and ASP a bit higher, a bit quicker than what we were expecting in Q4 in order to meet that. This is not impossible at all. That's not what I'm saying. I think that they will do that, and I was reassured in this view by this morning's comment. For instance, we knew that volumes were quite higher than expected in color screens and picture phones, but now we know that the margins on this phone are better than what Nokia used to do in the past in high-end phones.
Right, of course, they have come up with some radical new designs for some of these phones. Do you expect these new designs to actually take off?
Well, yes. Unfortunately, or rather, I think it's not a bad thing, but these phones will be on the market only by at some point early next year. I mean, in Q1, it will be probably the end of January or February. And this is in order not to cannibalize the sales of the other phones they have currently on the market, and in order to enable prices to adjust in the meantime.
Right. Well, you still have a hold on the stock, though.
We do indeed, because we think that we are strong believers of Nokia stories on the long term. We think that short-term news flow momentum is positive and product momentum is positive. However, we believe that in the medium term, probably 6-8 months, the competition will catch up with Nokia. We will have a lot more color screen handsets and camera embedded phones coming from Ericsson, Samsung, Sharp, a lot of newcomers from Asia in Europe and in the States, and this probably may endanger Nokia's position.
Okay, we'll watch out for that. Christophe Alonso, thanks so much for joining us. Christophe there from Barclays Private Clients joined us out in London. Well, Nokia is not the only one upbeat about imaging handsets. The Japanese have taken to them like bees to honey, and that's pushed up domestic shipments of mobile phones by 2.3% for July, up for the first time in 14 months. The numbers indicate renewed interest in mobile phones in a market that's widely regarded as mature. Well, analysts say that most are upgraded, and that is users inspired to change their old phones for camera-equipped ones. Add on handy phones, though, and the data does show a dip, although not by much. Handy phones are cheap to buy, but are increasingly shunned in Japan as they don't work well in moving vehicles. Checking shares of key Japanese handset makers there, all up today, except for Toshiba, down 1%. Balaji Buvrahan, manager for technology practice with Frost & Sullivan, joins us now in our studio for a closer look at Japan's mobile handset market. Balaji, good to have you here as always. What are some of the key applications you think that's really helping to boost this sort of upgrade cycle?
Currently, everybody is talking about the multimedia messaging, which is a part of sending of photographs or the pictures. But in the years to come, we would see color screens with a lot of other applications. Basically, maybe you can talk about reading a book, or handheld devices are equipped with cell phones. So a lot more applications can be done. Maybe a transfer of information or even transfer of files can be done through the handsets. As we see a Japanese market, most of the time they used to buy cell phones rather than PCs. So handheld devices equipped with wireless going to take really a good stance in the market.
Now, NTT Docomo has also told us in the past that they very much view the handset more as a computer rather than a voice device. Do you think this sort of difference in terms of philosophy in phone designs have always given the Japanese makers a slight edge in terms of the kind of technologies they incorporate into these handsets?
Sure, exactly. The point is there, most of the people who have access to internet, most of them mainly done through the cell phone rather than access through the PC. So that's one of the main advantage where most of the companies like Machita or NEC had a competitive edge. But in the newer handset, it equipped with photos, maybe Sharp and Sony Ericsson are poised to grow in those markets because they top in technologies like wireless as well as in imaging technologies like photos and cameras.
Do you expect this sort of uptrend for imaging phones to actually continue, or is this perhaps just a slight bump in what's considered like a mature market?
Currently, it's very difficult to say because after 14 months, we are seeing some amount of bottom up. But given the current trend, at least for another 6 months to come, there are a lot more people going to move from the traditional, handsets to the new handsets.
Does that mean that ARPU will go up, though?
ARPU for the handsets will go up, as well as the service providers are banking on selling the new handsets at a cheaper price in order to gain revenues and applications. So that's going to be the name of the game in future.
Do you think that even though J-Phone has come out first with these sort of applications and now Docomo has also released its new handsets equipped with cameras, are they poised to actually overtake J-Phone's dominance in this particular field?
Currently, J-Phone is the market leader in this kind of phones, even though I think NTT Docomo has more than 60% of the current cell phone market. But this trend is going to be across all the companies, all the service providers. So NTT Docomo will take over J-Phone over the period of time.
Right.
Again, KDDI has a different role to play because they have introduced 3G, which seems to work much, much better. The subscriber additions are really growing day by day. So it's a very interesting market to look out.
Definitely. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us today. Balaji Buvrahan from Frost & Sullivan. Well, meanwhile, we talked about Ericsson earlier a bit. Ericsson has sounded out a warning to telecom operators. The Swedish telco equipment provider says the field for third-generation operators is overcrowded and that there cannot be more than 4 players in each market, even big ones. Ericsson says that we're likely to see more fallout as telcos suffer from the ill effects of expensive licenses, leaving them unable to invest in infrastructure. Spain's Telefonica, as well as Finland's Sonera, for instance, incurred a write-off nearing 9 billion euros when they recently pulled the plug on their 3G venture in Germany. Shares of Ericsson currently down 5.5% in Europe trade. Well, before we take a break, here's some interesting trivia. Cisco Systems takes the top spot in global market share for network equipment. Well, the data from Synergy Research shows that Cisco commands 14.6% of the pie, up from 13% in Q1. Stay with E, we will be right back.
CNBC Asia. Profit from it.
Working with Chevron Texaco, I travel the world, photographing people, all of them dedicated to producing energy as partners in every way.
In 180 countries, Chevron Texaco knows that to be the best, you have to make the most of every partnership.
1,000 amazing stories, and we've really just begun.
Turning partnership into energy, Chevron Texaco.